Welcome to a special episode of Fourth and Frames. I'm your host, Chris Battistell, and with me is my co-host, Rhett Manuel. We are sans Drew Scott today, but we welcome a very special guest, Bob Harris from FootballDiehards.com and SiriusXM Fantasy. We're going to be talking about ADP Dilemmas and Pick 'em or Pass 'em, as well as some Scott Fishbowl 13 strategies. Let's get it popping. Before we get into the episode, please like the stream, subscribe to the channel, and hammer that notification bell to get notified whenever the Fantasy and Frames content team drops new content, which is almost on a daily basis. And if you're listening to this on the podcast form, please rate and review the podcast. I cannot tell you how much importance that has on us being successful, which ultimately helps you be successful in your fantasy leagues. And follow the Fantasy and Frames crew wherever they are on Twitter. We are at Fourth and Frames, at Fantasy and Frames, at Dynasty 365, at Shoot the Gap. We are all over the place. Now, allow me to introduce multiple award winner, Fantasy Sports Writers Association Hall of Famer, a man that has contributed to SI.com, FoxSports.com. He's now with FootballDiehards.com and the Football Diehard Show on SiriusXM Fantasy. You can usually find him on Channel 87, but right now, tonight, he is with us on Fourth and Frames, Mr. Bob Harris.
Hey guys, how's it going? Chris, Rhett, good to be on. I was on like 87 earlier today, and I'll be on after this again tonight. So
yeah, there you go.
It's hard to miss me. By the way, I just want to say, it was like I don't want to say it was oxymoronic, but you said my Scott Fishbowl strategy.
You don't have one yet? You're just picking a player and going at this
I don't know.
point.
I've done a little mocking and started to, just get the lay of the land, and as we hammer out and dial in, the scoring system this year is great, but looking forward to it, man.
Yes, sir. You got to get into some of the mocks held by Gator J. He's run about 40 of them so far on Sleeper. He's just grinding them out, helping the people figure out who they're going to kind of get at the spots that they have drafted at. Hello to everyone in the chat. There was Albert there, Andrea there. We appreciate all the viewers who've come in. If you're on Twitter, you're watching this on Twitter, hop over to YouTube, hop in the chat, ask a question for myself, Rhett, Bob, about Scott Fish, anything fantasy in general. That's what we're here for, to answer your questions. Bob, you've been playing fantasy football since 1993. Through the decades, can you give me one thing maybe you like and one thing you've disliked from the evolution of the game from that time?
There's nothing I don't like about it. I love everything. I actually started playing in 86. I created the business in 93.
Okay.
So I think that was like, when I first started playing, I think it took me about a day before I was saying to myself, we don't have enough information to do this right. And so that's kind of where, the genesis of getting into the business end of it, and, started that a few years later. But I like, if I try to think about things I don't like, the things I don't like now are more work related, where I'm in probably more leagues than I need to be in.
Yeah.
And I struggle, with like everyone in this business knows, there's a little bit of a grind, and my actual work schedule is not especially conducive to doing free agency the way I'd like to do it. And so I really have to focus and prioritize the leagues that I really want to do well in, like the Scott Fishbowl. There are a handful of them. Yeah. And every year it seems like the list gets a little longer. I add something. There's a few dynasty leagues that, you're playing with some heavy hitters, and you don't want to embarrass yourself. So you focus a little bit on those, and other ones fall by the wayside. That's the thing that really irritates me, is that just trying to be realistic when you're in 30 some leagues that you're managing. Some of them have to take a back seat, and I hate that part. But everything else about fantasy football, there's not one part of it I don't love. And like every damn format, I mean, they're just like, it seems like every new innovation that comes along is additive. It's not like I'm taking anything away. When best ball came along, you're going, wow, this is great. It's funny because my boss, Emil Kadlik, actually developed the first best ball league in, I want to say 1998, or at least the first documented one.
Yep.
Where we were playing in an experts league, and for the exact reason, we were all in too many leagues and we didn't want to have to manage them. And as they, as they came up, the recent popularity, I just love, it's like mock drafts, except that matter. But I mean, every single development that's come along, daily fantasy came along and fixed whatever complaints you had about season long were fixed by daily. And whether it was injuries or a lousy draft or whatever, you could just, kind of regroup. And I still love, I sit here and watch every Sunday after I get off the radio. I sit down with all my GPP lineups. It's like having a handful of lottery tickets to watch the game with, So there's nothing about it I don't love.
Yeah, they got the Chat GPT. I'm just looking for a roster management AI that I can just put my teams in.
I'm working on those too. I mean, I think we're all out there trying to figure out what's going on with the AI and how we can use it to benefit. I mean, you're already out there with spreadsheets, and we have technology on the footballdiehards.com site of My Fantasy GM. A lot of things you can do to, help manage the teams. But when you're in with, you're swimming with the sharks. I mean, it's just, you've got to be super on top of it. And like the Scott Fishbowl, I mean, if your quarterback gets hurt, there's 10 people grabbing your backup quarterback, knowing that so I mean, it's just like, it's intense, and you've got to really be Johnny on the spot. And I'm not always. I'm like, I always like to use the excuse, and and it is an excuse. But like, my job is not me winning fantasy titles. It's helping my subscribers win fantasy titles. That's the number one priority for me, is taking care of the audience and doing those things. And, it's easy for me now to say, well, that's why I don't win. But sometimes I do win, and I say, well, it's because I'm great. So I don't know.
That's it.
All right. So, Bob, I need to know before we get started tonight. So I need to know what your flavor of choice is. So if you have to choose one type of league to win, whether it's a best ball, whether it's a DFS, high stakes, a dynasty league, a redraft, what's your weapon of choice? What's your go-to, man?
Best ball has probably become my favorite thing, just because I can do so much of it and I can grab so many shares and test out so many strategies. But I want to say, if I'm just sitting here and you said you can play in one thing this year, it would probably be just in like a nice super flex league. I've really taken to that. I love, the leveling of the quarterback value to make it a little more, similar to what the NFL is. And so that would probably be it. If you just said, okay, it's like the desert island thing. You have one album to take to a desert island. If I had one contest, it would probably, or one game to play, it would probably be some form of super flex. I mean, if you really wanted to press it, it would be some kind of dynasty super flex. Okay, let's press it further. Super flex dynasty IDP with full, 22-man starting lineups and 50-man rosters. But that's I don't know if that's possible. Will they allow that?
Yeah, awesome.
We can do whatever we want. It's our world, man.
Fair enough.
And what I'm saying, and what I love, is the way you refer to this, is you make fantasy football sound like a date night. So like, just give me a nice super flex on the rocks with a medium rare best ball, and we're good to go on that. So love it.
Yes, sir. What is the album you're taking to a desert island?
So there is a handful of perfect albums, right? For me, I'm a metalhead. Everyone knows this. Slayer, Seasons in the Abyss, Metallica, the obvious Master Puppets. You could throw in Judas Priest, Stained Class. There's some Pantera. I think a Vulgar Display of Power would be on there. Alice in Chains, Dirt would be on there. Also, there's like some not like the Who's Next would be on that list of perfect albums for me as well. I mean, just albums where there's not a single bad note, not a single second I can't listen to over and over. Those would all qualify. If you made me pick just one, it'd probably be Master of Puppets. And Megadeth, Hangar 18 would be on there as well.
Good choice. Good choice. Rhett, do you have an album you're taking to a desert island?
Oh yeah, my music taste is so wide ranging. Y'all don't want that smoke with me. So, but like, if I really have to choose one, I'm through most of my teenage years, I was a big hip hop guy, still am to this day. And this is me and my wife's go-to road trip album, because it's just one that these albums, you get them word for word and you memorize everything. You memorize the beats, you realize what's coming next, even the ad libs. Sorry, Bob, don't judge me, but I'm probably a Lil Wayne quarter three guy. I'm sorry. It's just who I am.
The funny thing about music is, and like, I have my lane that I like to drive in, but I'm also a musician. I like to play the music as well. Nice. But like, I can listen to any music that's done well. I don't care, anything that's performed well at a high level. whatever the brand. I mean, I'm not like a huge country music fan, but if somebody does that really well and has put together some really good tunes and the musicianship is outstanding, I will listen to the hell out of that all the way through classical, through anything. So I'm not, not going to totally discriminate. I'm going to follow my path, but if I run aground and stray off it, I'm not afraid.
Right on. For me, it's Marty Robbins' Ballad of a Gunfighter. Classic album.
I love me some Marty Robbins. Him questions. No one dared to make a slip.
Yeah, you got it.
Big iron on his hip.
Yeah, love it.
Marty Robbins, stuff, man.
He's that dude. All right, let's get into why we're here. Scott Fishbowl 13 strategies. Now, Bob, you're live drafting from Dallas, part of the Wingstop division, with former Fourth and Frames guest Eric Moody, and with Fantasy and Frames team member Steph Miller. Steph Miller's in the Whataburger division, but she's going to be down at the live draft as well. But let's talk about some of this Scott Fishbowl stuff. The scoring is dropped. The roster construction is in. It's a third-round reversal draft, but let's get into it.
Every year Scott comes up with this super unique scoring system for the tournament. So knowing that, what are some key strategies or approaches that you're going to recommend to navigate the scoring and the roster settings of this year's Scott Fishbowl?
I think, just looking at how much greater the scoring is, I think it opens the door to not feeling locked in on getting that second quarterback as early or even your first quarterback as early. I think in my first mock, I took I know see Mr. Scampers out in the chat. I was channeling my inner Scampers and slow rolling my quarterback a little bit. I waited till I think round 3 in the first mock I did. But, getting Christian McCaffrey, who I think I'll get a good workload, but touches are going to matter. Carries are going to matter at tight end. So I went running back tight end, going up from the 11th spot and then waiting until round 3 for my quarterback. And then again, waiting a few more rounds for my next quarterback. And I felt like it worked out pretty well. I think that's going to be tight ends are going to be obviously a heavy focus for everybody. Sure. And getting locked in. I'm not going to play games at quarterback, but I'm not going to overplay it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I found the mocks that I've done going heavy tight end, bully tight end in those early rounds. I've been able to get like a Hawkinson, Kittle, and then maybe a Goddard stack. Having those two guys, having one tight end in the tight end spot and 2 guys in the flex with the boosted scoring, because if he catches a first down, it's a 20-yard first down, 10-yard first down. That tight end's going to put up 5 to 6 points and then everything on top of that. Right. So the tight end for me is going to be the position that I'm attacking.
I think in the most recent mock, I just did a mock the other day knowing I was going to come on here. So I'm pulling it up, but I did in this one drafting 11. When Andrews or McCaffrey, Andrews, Prescott, Cooper, Waller, Sanders, Carr, Williams. I got Jordan Love, got my third quarterback fairly early. Added Hayden Hurst, tacked him on at the end. I think it might be, some decent volume there. But this is going to be, tight ends are going to go heavy, and it just kind of takes a little bit of the emphasis off the quarterback.
Yeah,
but not all the emphasis off.
Yeah, it is super flex at the end of the day. So you want to make sure you're buckling down some decent quarterbacks, and with the tight end position and where they're being drafted, like you said, they've been pushed down. I've been able to get decent quarterback 5th, 6th round, picking from the 12th spot even. And then even with the 3rd round reversal, I feel comfortable taking the positional players outside of the quarterback with those first 2 picks, seeing what's falling to me, because it seems like the first 10 rounds are quarterback focused with Justin Jefferson in there and with Travis Kelce, of course, in there. And I've been able to get a Jamar Chase, Saquon, or a Jamar Chase, and then tie that up with an Austin Eckler stack. And then with the 3rd round reversal with the 301, grabbing that maybe, top 15, top 12 quarterback.
Yep. That's kind of how it played out for me getting Prescott. I kind of, went back and forth between Prescott and Tua, and kind of felt like, I think I would rather, play it a little safer with that QB1 and then maybe take my chances down the line a little bit. But quarterbacks went remarkably, slow in this latest one I did. I mean, I want to say slow, but, relatively speaking, with Geno Smith, I think didn't come off until what round? It was like super late, I thought. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, round 6, I want to say. So round 5. So I think this is what we're going to see. Last year I tried a similar approach, kind of trying to wait on my second quarterback, and it failed miserably. because I picked the wrong second quarterback. But I do think I think the same approach is. I think it'll be a similar approach this year. I'm just really enthusiastic over the overall scoring going up as much as it's going to go up, and I know it's relative, but it still feels good when you're just getting more points.
Yeah.
Yeah, my question for you was this, because I just got my invite yesterday and did my first mock today. So I'm on very initial reactions right now. And the first thing I noticed today in my first mock was like, wow, everybody is just so on top of things that the getting your guy philosophy to me feels like it's going to be super paramount. But at the same time, you won't be able to get those elite stacks like Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. So, I mean, are you with me on thinking that like this whole get your guy thing, no matter where you're drafting, is super important with everybody around you, or what?
No, there's no getting your guy. We were talking a little bit. Did a really nice draft. Where I felt like I was landing every guy. I feel like I will not land hardly any guys in this draft. I mean, drafting 11, I may well get the tight ends, or at least the top tight end, one of the top tight ends that I want, based on what I've seen so far in the mocks. But this is just one of those where you kind of throw everything out the window and you try to be really fluid. And I think it's really important, to mock as much as you can to try to have an understanding of what's going to be waiting for you, not just from round 1 to round 2, but from 3 or 4, and be thinking a few moves ahead. A little bit chess style is going to help you out a little bit. So you're not, you're have a little clarity on what your plan is at quarterback and who some of your desired picks are at the position. But don't be married to them, because you'll be disappointed. And you know what happens when you feel like, oh, wow, I needed that guy. And then you're going to make a stupid pick because you're sitting there stressing out over missing out on the guy you wanted. So I try to keep it real low key and relaxed and hope I get the guys I want, but have a pool of players more so than a single player.
Guy.
Yeah. Just leads.
Yeah. You talk about fluid. I'm not a Najee Harris guy, like, ever. And today in this mock, I had to pinch my nose and get him in the 4th round because I just didn't have a running back yet. So he was the best guy available. So fluidity is key. I completely agree with you, even after just one of these.
Yes, sir. Now, how do you balance the need for consistent performers versus high risk, high reward players when constructing your Scott Fishbowl roster?
So I think that's the key in every draft. You can add risk on your roster without having a risky roster. Is what I like to say. And there's,
like that,
kind of like putting together a puzzle, right? If you're drafting a boom bust guy, sometimes I'll just do it like alternate rounds. Like, oh, here's a little bit of a boom bust guy. I do this with receivers a lot. And, I won't be drafting receiver heavy early in this draft, obviously, but you can kind of piece together, like, I think this guy might have some bad weeks, so I'll find a 11ing agent, right? Someone who's I think is going to have a solid floor and hopefully pretty high floor. Receivers, you're looking at guys like, as a second receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown or something. If you can, if you maybe go Tyreek Hill first and you think, there might be some small weeks. Oh, you even that out. And I think you can do that in pretty much every position. You take a little bit of a risk or a little bit of chance and then get what I'd like to call a steady Eddie, a guy that I know is going to be out there and take some, a handful of non-zero players. But this is essentially a large field tournament. You're not gonna win this by having low floor guys and avoiding zeros. You're gonna win this by having all your guys hit and being aggressive with those players. So I'll probably be a little more aggressive in this than I am in most drafts.
So who's a guy you're kind of being more aggressive towards in your mock drafts right now?
So early on, I want to say it. I don't know if I've hit a pattern yet. I'm just going to look at the couple of the most recent and see if there was anyone that really stands out. I mean, I'm willing to take a chance. So like Jordan Love has been a quarterback I've been getting as like my 3rd quarterback, right? I don't think, and I talk about this all the time. We don't have enough information to know what Jordan Love is. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and guess the Packers did, right? Just as a responsible steward of a franchise, you're sitting there and you're letting go a 4-time MVP, future Hall of Fame player, in a league where quarterbacks they're not 32 of those, really to go around, right? So, I don't think the Packers have just moved on from Aaron Rodgers thinking they have nothing, right? And I don't know what it is, and maybe they don't know fully what it is, but they have a pretty good idea they have something there. So I'm going to go ahead and take a flyer on him a little later, ideally as a 3rd quarterback, and that's where I got him in my pick of the last mock drafts I've done. And so he's one I'll take a chance on, and maybe, Romeo Doubs late to go with him. It sounds like they're having good connection, but I think it's more, the lower end players who I'm taking shots on, guys that I think, I don't want to call them flyers, but I mean, I think guys that maybe will come up. I'm trying to come up with players that are going to deliver way bigger than what the expectation is. And, that's tricky business. It's not a science. It's a little bit of an art, and not one that works all the time, but that's part of the fun of this kind of thing. And I get it. I think you need to view it as a large field tournament, right? You have to differentiate a little bit to some degree, and you can't have a lot of low floor, just like play to avoid zeros.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with all that. Gator J asks a great question. Is stacking in Scott Fishbowl a viable strategy?
I just think it's being more widely accepted overall. I haven't done a ton of it. I get it more organically with later picks, like I mentioned, you can get Romeo Dubs, and, if you got Jordan Love, but you're getting them both late. It seems a little harder earlier, and I haven't forced the issue because I'm mostly just trying to get some real key players.
Yep.
Maybe I'll get into that a little more. Did I do any in the last? I feel like I tried, and it didn't work out for me in the last one I did. I'm just going to double check that. McCaffrey, Andrews, Prescott. One of the stacks I like a lot, I think Amari Cooper and Deshaun Watson would be good, but Watson's going a little bit, people are starting to pick up on Watson a little bit, I think, anymore. So I think you could get Derek Carr and a piece with him. I did get Michael Thomas in this draft in particular with him, and you can get other players, but you're taking some chances there.
Yeah. So let's just keep rolling. So can you share any specific draft strategies or techniques that have proven successful for you in past editions of the Scott Fish Bowl?
No, because I have not had great success in past editions of the Scott Fish Bowl. Draft guys that aren't going to get hurt. That would be the first focus. No, honestly, I wish I had been more successful. I think I've only made the playoffs one time, I want to say. And a lot of that has just been, due to some bad injury luck. And playing in a lot of leagues, one of the things I'm hoping for is I feel like I always draft pretty well. And if everyone stays intact and in one piece, I'm going to be pretty competitive as things stand. But we all know how often that happens. Not all that often. I almost said an extra word in there.
I love it. This is my first Scott Fish Bowl, so I have nothing really to offer on past strategies. I know the scoring changes every year.
It does.
So I think I was talking to someone today. I thought it'd be a pretty cool idea to create a dynasty league and then every year have the scoring change with the Scott Fish Bowl rules. I thought that'd be a pretty cool league to be part of.
I would pull my hair out. Oh, wait.
It would be stressful. Yeah.
Oh, wait.
It would definitely be a stressful league just because of the build of your team. It being a dynasty league, you cannot redraft, but I thought it'd be a pretty cool process to see unfold year in and year out. That's where you would need the AI just to adjust roster, make trades, make moves, and everything else in between. But speaking of positions, how do you approach positional scarcity and depth when making draft positions in the Scott Fish Bowl? And are there any specific positions that tend to be undervalued or overvalued in this tournament?
Oh, Jorge. Hello. Hello. And by the way, everyone, appreciate everyone out in the chat. Some of my friends out there, Andrea, and I see Zach out there, and Gator, and everybody.
It happens. Yes,
Mr.
Stampers.
It does, man. That's the thing, I mean, you got to be patient and take a long. You don't give Scott ideas. That's the best quote of the day. So I mean, I guess it seems to me just in general this year, and so far my early mocks are bearing this out. Running back has been a value, right? You can get running backs later, and so I'm going to go in with that approach. I think the positions of scarcity in this league are obviously going to be tight end and quarterbacks. And so I'm going to treat them accordingly, but not overdo it. I'll probably focus a little more on tight ends a little earlier. I want to have my two, I've always in the past gone and say, okay, I want to have that second quarterback by, let's say, round 5.
Yeah.
I'm going to give myself a little more leeway here and, see how it goes, but I'm probably going to stick with that and have my first 2 by then and have a couple tight ends, not long after that, if I don't already have them, and go from there. So those are going to be the positions. To me, those are key. So every year we go into drafts, just like in all leagues, saying, oh man, there's about, there's a ton of streaming tight ends available. Well, yes, there are. And everyone is trying to stream them. And, and picking which weeks they're going to hit and which weeks they're not can be tricky. I think there's something to be said for the volume plays at that position. And I think that's, like for me, fantasy football is about chasing volume. Yeah. Right. And I mean, we can get more refined than that, but that's the starting point at every position. And so the tight ends, you look at them, and so there's some sneaky plays, I think, in Scott Fishbowl. I mean, I think it's easy to overlook Tyler Higbee's target share last year.
Sure it
like
is.
The third highest target total. And so, don't overlook players that are going to get that kind of workload. I mean, Gerald Everett might be another one, except I don't know, they're going to be maybe some healthier players there. And Quentin Johnston's there. So I don't want to go overboard, but I'm looking for guys that I think are going to have that consistent role and consistent workload. And there's just not a ton of those available out there. And even some of the ones that are the sexy upside plays, I'm hoping Chigakonkwo is a thing. I think if he gets enough work, it'll be fantastic. Is that passing offense going to, be sufficient to give him that much work? That's a concern. Like he'll be super efficient, but I'm looking for the high volume guys. And I think that, that'll include guys like Kyle Pitts, Dwayne McFarland is out there somewhere trying to remind me, routes about how many, his routes run, his route participation number. And, and so, I mean, I think I'm going to be focused pretty heavily on tight end, and quarterback will be the secondary.
Yeah, Scott Fish himself made sure to emphasize that this season is based on volume, based on gluttony, and it's a scoring system that's going to benefit those guys that are touching the ball and touching the ball a lot. So Rhett mentioned Najee Harris, feeling a little icky picking Najee Harris there. But Najee Harris in that backfield is going to be touching that ball. He's going to be on the field about 75% of the time there in Pittsburgh, and he's going to be the goal line guy. He's going to be the guy that gets the ball quite a bit. So Najee Harris for me is a guy that I find kind of slipping in these mock drafts that I don't mind picking up in the 4th or 5th if he's there for me.
Yeah, I want to say Miles Sanders is another one of those that I think might get a lot of work as a receiver. And we could think back to his rookie season in Philadelphia. They had all the injuries at wideout, and he ended up catching 50 balls that year. But he turned out to be a really good playmaking threat. You just wonder if the running back isn't going to be a good friend to the rookie quarterback. And if we're carrying that over, I mean, what's going to happen with the Houston backfield? There might be some value there as well.
Great.
Yeah, I was actually going to get ready to ask you about Houston, because with this tight end super premium, we can call it, how are you feeling about Dalton Schultz with these lack of wide receivers in Houston? So is he a sneaky value?
I think so. I mean, I think he's still pretty much going at the tail end of the starting, just in your normal best ball drafts right now. And so, thank you, Jorge. Yes, everyone go to the expo. I love being there. It's so much fun, man. Just to rub shoulders with everyone and get a little FaceTime with people. So I'm not you sit there and you talk to avatars all day long on Twitter. I like to meet the people and see what's going on. So I hope to see everyone out there. But that's I think that backfield to me in Houston, I don't think they have the receiving kind of. I mean, maybe Devin Singletary can be it. So to me, Dalton Schultz, I'm also like Nico Collins. I find myself in drafts, as watching people draft somebody's wide receiver 4 going, Nico Collins is waiting for you.
One over there.
But to the point, I do think Schultz is probably in a good spot and hopefully, gets leaned on heavily. I think you could really, at the tail end of that tight end 1 range, I think he might have some value there.
Do you have a favorite late round tight end that you've been targeting quite a bit?
So there was a lot of Juwan Johnson, which, by the way, this is like the 3rd year of me targeting Juwan Johnson, waiting him to turn into a thing. But now Foster Moreau's there. You got the connection with Carr, so I'm not as excited. So I'm going to go and throw out the name that is going to be totally irrelevant by this time next year, and everyone will forget I said it. But Cole Turner in Washington is a player to watch. Keep hearing the beat writers tell me that. Matt Wallman from the rookie scouting portfolio throwing that one on me. Jelani Woods, I think, is a great play. I do think there are guys out there that you can see, man, if it all comes together for them, this could be the year. And so I'll take some flyers on those guys, probably for sure in the Scott Fish Bowl. But not until I get the established plays. I don't want to take too many chances in the position.
Yeah, probably the icky thing about the Scott Fish Bowl this year is that it incentivizes tight ends so much. Like last year at this time of the year, there was a big Albert Akui-Bunum haze going on, like as potential there. And come to find out, that was nothing, and Greg Dulcich may have been more of a thing. So, yeah, if you're going to get on those guys, yeah, you've got to wait if you're going to take these risky guys like Jake Ferguson in Dallas. There might be a little bit of buzz there, but we have no idea what he actually is at that point. So
totally true. But I mean, even the other Washington tight end, you're thinking, wow, Eric Bieniemy's there. The Kansas City Chiefs know how to use tight end. Somebody there is going to make a little hay at that position. You can think, we're all looking at Cole Kmet as a kind of a target monster, but I think in drafts like this, Robert Tonyan is going to, people are going to end up having Tonyan on their roster. So there's a ton of guys out there, and I think people will be over some of the overlooked commodities. The Hunter Henrys and Isaiah Likely's are going to be going too as well. So,
yeah, I'm a big Cade Otton guy when it comes to late round tight ends. I think he's going to have a decent year there in Tampa Bay as well. You mentioned Hunter Henry, but I feel like I've been grabbing a lot of Mike Gesicki late there in New England.
Yep. Yeah, I think so too. And so like a lot of this is, in the best ball evolution as I go along, I started in February. So there are players like you mentioned, Cade Otton. I probably feel like I'm already a little oversaturated on Cade Otton, and I've kind of moved on into a new territory. So probably, 2 months ago, I would have said the same thing, and, maybe will again at some point. I mean, these things kind of ebb and flow as you go along, and maybe as I get, as we're getting later in the fishbowl. But I think that is a really good play. I think Cade Otton's a good call.
Yes, sir.
So look, one last question about the Scott Fish Bowl. So, everybody knows you draft, you feel the best about it. Everybody thinks they have the best team, but then none of it really matters until you can actually manage it in season. So do you have any advice for managing in-season rosters and making lineup decisions inside the Scott Fish Bowl, considering the scoring variations on a weekly basis and the matchups?
Be aggressive. Be super proactive on the waiver wire. First and foremost, everyone is. Don't sit back. You're not going to win anything sitting back in this league in general. And the same with when you're setting your lineups. Don't be afraid to take risks. I know that there's a lot of people out there who want to play safe. Again, this is not like your regular fantasy league. This is like playing at a tournament.
Yeah,
you're going to need to stand out a little bit. And look, you got to get into the playoffs. So I get it. Play it cool, but don't be afraid to be aggressive. I'm gonna try and be more aggressive this year than I have been in the past.
Yeah, the first thing I'm hearing right now is what you're telling me as someone who is inexperienced in the Scott Fish Bowl. All I'm hearing is be aggressive with those upside guys.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy who we're not sure about, like George Pickens had a pretty good rookie year. We're not quite sure what he's going to be in year two, but we know the upside can be there. Another guy we might look at is somebody like a Tank Bigsby. We don't know what Jacksonville's backfield will be, but we know that he could be a part of it. And we know that if something goes wrong with Travis Etienne, he can be a huge asset. So, I really love that advice, and I think it's fantastic.
Agreed. One last question about Scott Fish Bowl before we change topics here. How much petty cash do you save throughout the year to go to the live drafts and feed your opponents drinks?
So I will pay any price whatsoever to diminish my opposition. I will wine them, dine them, and whatever it takes. I myself don't drink, so don't try it on me, people. I know I'm sitting in front of a bar; it's not mine. So it'll never work. And by the way, Scampers last year at LA was such a phenomenal experience. And I'm doing Dallas this year. Matt Walsh invited me back to LA this year, and I initially accepted because I didn't know there was a Dallas. But once I found out there was a Dallas, I felt I had to represent locally, and there's some great people here. It's going to be a super good time, so I'm looking forward to it. And yes, I will be buying all the drinks I possibly can because we'll be at a place called Community Beer.
Oh, there you go.
They will be flowing.
Bob, I'm going to be honest with you. When I got my invite yesterday, I looked at the live draft schedule and I was realizing I was going to be in Dallas at that particular time. So I was that close to doing it. But then I was like, my wife is going to kill me considering we're going to be at a conference for work together. So, sorry we couldn't do it in person, but I mean, I'll do the
surviving into the season is worthwhile endeavor. No need to take those kind of chances. Take your chances.
Preserving my marriage is key.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm excited for it. It's my first as well. I'm pretty hyped up for the tournament. But just a reminder, if you're watching, like the stream, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell to get notified whenever we drop new content on the Fantasy in Frames Network. We are joined today by Bob Harris, fantasy football legend. We've just got into the Scott Fish Bowl strategy segment. If you're on Twitter and you're watching on Twitter and you want to drop a question in in the chat. Hop over to YouTube. We cannot see the Twitter questions, so make sure you hop over to YouTube, hop in the chat, and fire away. We're going to get into our next segment, ADP Showdown, pick 'em or pass 'em. We're going to bring up a certain player. We're going to discuss whether or not we're going to be picking that player or passing it on that player based on their current ADP. The ADP is from Bob Harris's website, footballdiehards.com. Rhett, the floor is yours.
All right, I wanted to start off with a guy that I know you've been talking a lot about right now. And let's just go ahead and let's get into the Alexander Mattison debate, because I was looking things up yesterday and Dalvin Cook is released last week and Alex Mattison is our presumed running back one. Still only 25 years old, going into the fourth year, not a lot of tread on the tires, has this great fantasy points per opportunity where he averaged 0.96 per opportunity last year per player profile, had 6 touchdowns in a pretty limited role, 32 receptions, has all that upside, but at the same time has a low yards per carry, only had 89 touches last year, plays in a pass-heavy offense, is a so-so speed guy, so you're not going to get many breakaway runs, and potentially is in a wide-open running back race with guys who, frankly, are better athletes than him at the running back position in that running back room. So, Bob Harris, pick or pass Alexander Mattison in the 7th round?
7th round, I might go ahead. You know, there are concerns for him. For me, this is a pass-heavy team. Pass balls more than 64% of the time last year. I do think Mattison is locked in. You know, following the money, and that's always a good way to do it. But running back is a position where, you know, funny things happen. And we can go back and recount every single season of fantasy football when some running back who nobody drafted is won somebody a title. So and one of those Minnesota backs, who knows? But I feel like you know, they're calling it a competitive rebuild in Minnesota. So you know, I'm kind of shying away a little bit, but I don't think the 7th round is out of line for him.
Agreed. Now, speaking of the Minnesota backfield, do you have your thumb on a guy behind Alexander Mattison that you're kind of keeping an eye on? Maybe it's Ty Chandler, maybe it's Dwayne McBride over there.
I'm not excited about any of them, but it'd be Chandler if it's any of them. I'm not, you know, again, listening to my good friend Matt Waldman from the Rookie Scouting Portfolio. He's not a big McBride fan, and so I kind of follow his lead on that one. He's studied film way more than I have. And Chandler, you know, does have a little experience there. Kenny Nwangwu, I don't think is going to be a factor. Seems like, you know, I know reporters who cover that team on a daily basis. Matthew Collar from Purple Insider, you know, has kind of been big on Nwangwu, but it just doesn't seem to be working out. It seems like they prefer him more as a special teams play. So it'd probably be Chandler for me if it was anyone.
Yep, I dig it. So I'm going to talk about Travis Etienne. Thank you, Rhett, for that one. RB5, current ADP around the early 2nd. The depth chart over in Jacksonville. They drafted Tank Bigsby. They re-signed JaMychal Hasty. They brought in Ernest Johnson, and they still got Snoop Conner over there. Last season finished as the RB17, 220 attempts, 1,125 yards, 5 touchdowns. He averaged at about 5.11 yards per carry. He was RB24 in fantasy points per game. So not the greatest production for his profile. It was, I guess, technically his rookie year because he did miss that first year with the Liz Frank injury. He struggled inside the 5 though. With 13 touches, he only got the 10 yards and 3 touchdowns on that. So considering his touch rate, I believe he was tied for first in touches inside the 5 and only turned those into 3 touchdowns. So Tank Bigsby, I believe, is a guy that can run in between the tackles, and he's going to take some of that inside the 5 work where the Jaguars struggled to produce points and take that away from Travis Etienne. Tank Bigsby, high missed tackle rate guy, a player he's always finding a way to move forward. He's always moving for his feet are always moving. He's going to fall forward. Like I said, he's going to be that guy on the goal line. It's not the sexiest situation in terms of threats to his starting job outside of maybe Tank Bigsby. We did see JaMychal Hasty come on a bit in the second half of the year, but he wasn't really a huge threat to his production. They signed to Ernest Johnson, but to me, that's more of just a depth play, because it's never a bad thing, just like offensive linemen. It's never a bad thing to have depth at the running back position. For me, it's the high possibility of touchdown loss in that offense. So I got to ask, we picking them or we passing on them?
I'm passing on them. I might have 0 shares so far. I have to go check, but I'm pretty sure it's close to 0. I just, eyeball test wise, I don't like the upright running style. I mean, this is an ascendant offense. I think it's going to be a better offense, but it's going to primarily run through the pass. He can catch the football and he can make plays. I mean, I'm not against him. I'm against him at the price. It just seems like it's a little too rich for my blood. A lot of times I'll be taking the cheaper piece of a backfield like this. I know my radio co-host, Mike Dempsey from my Sirius show, covers the Jaguars on a daily basis. And he's kind of keen on Bigsby as well. Apparently, Tank is not his actual name. It's a nickname, perhaps based on his physical stature. So
I heard it was given to him by his grandmother or something like that. Is that right?
Looks the part, apparently. So, I'm just, and like, it's not like I'm not out chasing Tank Bigsby. I mean, if it happens late in the draft, that's great.
Sure.
But I'm definitely, there are other avenues I'm tend to be driving, other lanes I'm driving in at the time Travis Etienne's going.
Rhett, picking or passing on Travis Etienne?
For me, God, I have a lot of personal bias towards Travis because I actually covered him in high school during the newspaper business. I watched this kid grow up. I know he's a solid human being. I know all these things. I'm really in love with the athletic profile. But where we are right now, and like we said, there's Calvin Ridley there. There's Evan Ingram. There's Zay Jones. There's all these weapons. And I'm not going to go into the stereotype right now or the cliche. We all know what it is about mouths and eating and all this different stuff. Won't do it. But that being said, with the Tank Bigsby thing in this early second round where he's going, is it 201 right now?
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
It'd be early.
Yeah, that's probably too soon. So we're going to pass it there. But like I always said, there's anybody at value, we're taking that guy at value. But second round ain't it.
Yeah, Mr. Scampers with the given name is Wreck-It Bigsby.
I love that.
That's gold. Bigger of the two Tanks in this draft.
I'm not sure where Tank Dell got his, but
I think that might always Nathaniel Tank Dell, right?
I think Tutu Atwell gave him that name because he's way different.
All right, Rhett, you're on the clock.
All right, let's talk a little bit of Michael Thomas, who's probably one of the more polarizing guys because he really hasn't been an active participant in football at all since 2019. But we know Derek Carr's in there this year, so there's an obvious quarterback upgrade. And what people don't realize is like, well, he missed all of last year. Well, as someone who is a New Orleans Saints fan, in those 3 games that he actually played, he averaged 17 PPR points per game and had 3 touchdowns. And he won. The 3 cornerbacks he faced in that situations were J.C. Horn, Jamel Dean, and A.J. Terrell. So he wasn't facing bad cornerbacks at all. He was actually facing some of the more elite guys in the game. And he's probably going to get less attention than with Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed being there. But we know the health situation. Like we said, he hasn't really been healthy since 2019. Does he have that rapport with Derek Carr? We're not sure yet. And is speculation on what a guy could be worth it, especially since he hasn't played really significant time in 3 years? So are we taking or are we passing on Michael Thomas as the wide receiver 30 in the early to mid 10th round?
I'm broke back Thomas. I can't quit him. It's not at that price, right? I mean, I'll take a chance. I'll move on if it doesn't work out. And I'm not going to pretend that it's going to be 2019 Thomas, right? Any more than I think 2013, Josh Gordon is going to show up on my doorstep. But I don't need him to be at that price. And what you mentioned over that 3-game stretch is the thing that appeals to me. He looked pretty damn good. He looked pretty Michael Thomas-ish. And if I can get something like that, and I think Derek Carr can fuel the fantasy fortunes of these guys reasonably well. We've seen him do that in the past with multiple receivers in an offense. So, I think the price is right for me.
and I've been saying this myself, is that for these past few years with the quote unquote injury history, how much of that is actually true, we'll never know.
Right.
But I've always said that if you can get 70% of what Michael Thomas was in 2019, you've probably got a borderline wide receiver 1 at that point. So, I mean, at this ADP, Chris, what are you thinking, man?
Yeah, I'm picking him as well. I like him at that spot. It's a good value. If he can get any production in that offense, the biggest thing for me is health, if he can stay healthy. But that goes really for any player in the NFL, but especially Mike Thomas, because he's missed some time. If he can get healthy, he can get back to somewhat of his old self. I'll take a half. I'll take 3/4 of his old self at that price. So I'm picking him.
Yeah, same. I think I'm in on Michael Thomas this year. And if you get him that late and he burns you, then it's not like you have this third-round pick. It's a double-digit round pick.
You'll get over it.
There's that little
it's upside, baby.
Rub some dirt on it and you're good to go. My player in pick him or pass him is Treylon Burks, currently wide receiver 26, picking mid-6, 605. He's the wide receiver 1 in the depleted wide receiver room for the Titans. When you look at that depth chart, they got Kyle Phillips, Nick Westbrook-Akine, I think, are the other 2 starters across from him. Chigokwanku's there, of course. After that, it gets a little murky for the Tennessee Titans wide receiver room. He's got the elite potential, which is shown by his college profile, his college athletic profile. He was dominant in college. He's got elite size. He was measured going 22.6 miles per hour in the college game at Arkansas. And his rookie year was a little bit murky with the quarterback situation. When you look at Tannehill, didn't play all the games in 20 last year. He only had 325 attempts, put him at about QB 13. But if you go back to the year before that, when Tannehill was healthy, he threw the ball 531 times. That put him at about QB 6. So a top 8 QB in pass attempts. If that's with Henry there as well. So if the Tennessee Titans can get their wheels rolling with a passing offense, they definitely have a chance to produce a wide receiver 1 that the Tennessee Titans want out of Treylon Burks. They traded away A.J. Brown to acquire Treylon Burks. They're hoping to get some return on that investment. And I think that this is the year for Treylon to break out. I've been taking Jorge on Twitter every time I see a hype video from OTAs or these mandatory mini camps for Treylon Burks. Derrick Henry himself said that he's seen a big improvement. I mean, he's not really going to say the guy's been horrible. He's gonna talk up his teammates there, right? But he's saying he's seen a big improvement in Treylon Burks. Players going around him in that spot: George Pickens, Evan Ingram, Michael Pittman Jr., and Javonte Williams. So I'm comfortable taking Treylon before all those guys. For me, it's just opportunity to gain those targets. 11 games played, 1.7 yards per route run, 11.6 average depth to target with a 17.6% target share. So I smell breakout season for Treylon Burks, but do you? So are you picking him or passing on him at that ADP?
I like some of the players in that range. I'll have some shares of Treylon Burks. I like some of the recent reporting, just about his commitment. I think you saw he missed a flight and couldn't get a rental car, so he rented a Cessna and a pilot and flew in to make it to some OTAs.
Dedication.
Seems to be taking things much more seriously. Talking to Jim Wyatt from the team's website, and you look at all the guys from team websites. Jim Wyatt's a pretty straight shooter from that crowd, and he thinks he looks like a totally different player. And remember, he had the struggles last year with asthma, et cetera. So I don't want to overplay my hand. I'm not going to sit there and say that I'm targeting him there, but in enough drafts that I'll gladly take a few shares and hope that he can kind of turn into the thing they drafted him to be. And you got it right. I mean, it's not like quarterback where you move on. You don't move on from a guy without having his replacement. But I do think the Titans feel like they got a replacement. We all thought that when they drafted Treylon Burks, he's very similar. Well, he's not necessarily A.J. Brown, but hopefully he can develop into something close. Still a little high price for me. I would like to see him cheaper, but not afraid to take him if the draft is going that way for me.
Yep. Rhett, pick or pass on Treylon Burks at wide receiver 26, mid 6th round pick.
With or without Ryan Tannehill?
Good question. I'm going to go because he is still listed as the starter. Nothing has happened outside of that. I'm going to go with Ryan Tannehill.
God, then that makes it so much tougher for me because every ranking I've done ranking quarterbacks, Ryan Tannehill was toward the bottom of that in that 28 to 32 range. So, it's hard to bank on a receiver in a run-first offense with a quarterback that I don't have much confidence in. I do believe in the talent. Like, I love Treylon Burks' game. Watch him in the SEC. He did a lot of damage in the slot. He has his size. He has the speed that he can get deep. He can do a lot of things well. And year 2 is that time where if we see a wide receiver break out, it usually tends to be in that second year.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say push, can I?
No.
I'll buy. Then you know what? Let's take a risk and let's pick him because at this point, let's see what he has. And 6th round by this point, your core, your team should be pretty well in place. He's probably a flex play at this point for you. So in the 6th round, why not?
I probably feel better with Pittman, even not knowing the quarterback situation, because can it be worse than last year? And every time I say that, it obviously gets worse than last year. But just like as you sit here right now, I think the issue for me with when we have these conversations are, we're sitting here and I'll be in triple digits in best balls by the time the season's here. I'll have some of everybody. So like when you sit here and you say, okay, if I was drafting in a single draft, probably Burks would not be the guy I took there out of that group. I would probably take somebody else. But since I'm in many, many drafts, I will have my shares because I do want to, I want to taste of some of these guys, and I do think there's some upside there.
Yeah. And I agree with you there. And I do think, like you said, Michael Pittman is the guy I would take before him. And even with the fact that I feel like Kenny Pickett is going to be a safer quarterback play, I might go with Pickens above Burks.
I might too.
But that's a great question because Burks is so hard to forecast, man.
I feel like we're all really enthusiastic about Pickens without like a whole lot to hang our hats on, right? Like Deontay Johnson was still getting all the targets, just wasn't getting the touchdowns. And I don't know that that's going to change materially this year. I mean, maybe to some degree, but there's a little vibe about Pickens and the Steelers' history of raising these receivers up after they draft them, and they obviously put a lot of capital into them. So I'd probably be more likely to take a chance on Pickens than I am on Burks.
Yeah, Burks is a big Scott Fishbowl target for me, just based on the opportunity, high risk, high reward player. Yep. He can have those weeks where he's putting up those big numbers. We got a question from Gator J. As a Bucs fan, I need a little hope. With Wentz being seen in Tampa over the last
That's horrifying.
Yeah, there goes all your hope. Plus, can I rely on Rachaad White as a true running back bell cow in Tampa Bay?
To be determined by free agency. Honestly, I feel like there's, not just Dalvin Cook, but I mean, whether it's Ezekiel Elliott or some move that we're not going to foresee, there's going to be. I'm not as sold on Rachaad White as it seems like the Bucs are, or the Bucs are saying they are right now.
Yeah,
we'll see. That's going to be the determining factor. So I'm not getting a lot of shares of him right now. Have some. He's but kind of in a range of backs where I feel more comfortable with the job security. And I mean, if they don't do anything, I know people are going to be out there. Well, Chase Edmonds has had a good game. Yes, I think he had 2 of them. So, I'm not like he's not like a big threat, but I feel like we have not seen the end of the moves there. Let's say that he goes into the season as the primary back. I think he'll need to catch a lot of passes. I don't know how well they'll run the ball.
There it is, Gator. Hopefully Bob instilled a little more hope in your Tampa Bay Buccaneers situation. But you know what they say about hope, right?
Hope is cheap. Indulge yourself.
Yeah, no, can't pay your mortgage with it. All right, Rhett, your third player in Pick'em or Pass'em. Who you got?
I got one last guy to talk about with you, and that is Dallas Goedert at the tight end position. We know he plays in one of these elite offenses. We know that last year he was actually the number 5 tight end in fantasy points per game with 11.8 in PPR leagues. We know that he participated in 84% of routes, and we know that he is apparently a yak monster at the tight end position. Finished third at the position with 425 yards after the catch. All this sounds great, except for the fact that we have this. we know there are a lot of weapons. There's A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, DeAndre Swift. There's like so many guys, and Jalen Hurts who can take away some of those targets. And that's proven by the fact that he only had 68 targets in 12 games last year and only parlayed that into 3 touchdowns. And to top this off, oh yeah, they're a run offense. So pick or pass Dallas Goedert as the tight end 5 in the early 6th round.
I'm not getting a lot, but I don't think it's a bad pick, right? I don't. I think it's still a really decent play. Talking to some of the beat writers, I think I've talked to 2 different beat writers who have really pressed the notion that he's going to be more heavily targeted this year than he was, and that he'll essentially be the 3rd option in this passing attack. And that was after the arrival of DeAndre Swift. It seems like the Eagles don't really want to throw the ball to the running backs if they don't have to, although maybe, grabbing Swift, maybe there's a change coming. I don't know. As things stand right now, I think 5 or 6 is about right for me.
Yep. Yeah, I love the guy. I love the talent. I've always loved the player. I've always loved the upside. So, Chris, is this Dallas Goedert season for you or not?
Yeah, I'm all about Dallas Goedert this year, especially with the kind of wasteland that is after the tight end 5, 6. It gets a little jumbled, it gets a little murky for the tight end position. So those top 5 guys, I'm going to make sure I try to at least roster one of them, whether it's Goddard, maybe the guy just after Goddard going there. But yeah, definitely a buy for me there.
I think I have like Kelsey, Andrews, Hawkinson, Kittle, and Waller all ahead of him. So I've got it right at 6. I think that's right for, I would be totally comfortable taking him there.
Are you taking Pitts or Goddard?
I'm taking Goddard.
Taking Goddard over Pitts. Just basically based on the offense over there.
Based on the offense so, I think this is going to be a Bijan heavy offense. So I don't think anyone should be surprised. But also, it's been run heavy. I think Drake London being there, kind of takes a little of the vibe away. Also, again, channeling my inner Dwayne McFarland, that route participation number leads to elite production. So yeah, I would prefer Goddard. I know Pitt has all the talent in the world. They just haven't seemed to put it all together there. And I don't know that Desmond Ridder is the piece that's going to set him apart.
Yeah, there was a great quote from Arthur Smith he dropped today where someone asked him about Bijan Robinson, and he just said, "We don't have buyer's remorse." So they're liking what they've been seeing. We have a question. Go ahead.
You look at what they did, and in all due respect to Tyler Algier, he was a 5th round pick. He wasn't necessarily a lock to make that roster last year. Running behind that offensive line in the scheme, he had great deal of success. I'm guessing Bijan can probably match that and maybe surpass it. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely believe in Bijan. We got a question from Calvin Brown, 10-team, non-PPR, money league, 1 keeper, Justin Jefferson or Christian McCaffrey?
I'm leaning McCaffrey myself. I'm not nothing against Justin Jefferson. I do worry that he disappears some games. Christian McCaffrey can as well. I just probably feel a little more comfortable with the weekly workload and knowing that McCaffrey, and I get it. There were, Elijah Mitchell's there and he's going to have some work, but I think McCaffrey is the weapon that Kyle Shanahan's been looking for all his entire life. And he has the quarterback now he's been looking for his entire life, and Brock Purdy, who channels his inner Kyle Shanahan perfectly and makes this offense to work the way Kyle Shanahan wants. I like a piece of that offense slightly more. I wouldn't knock anyone for taking Justin Jefferson. I've said, as I go into these best balls and, drafting a lot of times, last year, I think we were all in on one guy as the first overall pick. I'm not that this year. I'm trying to spread around. There's 6 guys that I'm willing to take 1 overall, and I'm probably rotating them around a little bit, or at least to some degree. But most of those are going to be McCaffrey and Justin Jefferson. So if I have 10 first overall picks and those guys are my 10 picks, I'd probably go 60-40 CMC.
Yep, there you go. Thanks for the question, Calvin. One last pick 'em or pass 'em before we end the show. Deshaun Watson, quarterback, Cleveland Browns, QB10, right in that 7-12 range, 7th round, 12th pick. When he last played a full season, he was a consistent top 5 finisher. I believe there was that stretch of 3 years where he was QB5 finisher. In 2020, he was QB7 in points per game. In 2019, he was QB2 in points per game. Everyone is worried about his small sample size of production last year after missing a ton of games, missing practices, missing meetings. But through that time, through those games, he averaged 6 carries per game at 4.9 yards per carry, more yards per carry than Jalen Hurts and Trevor Lawrence. Granted, those guys carried the ball a little bit more, so that efficiency number is going to come down a bit just based on the amount that they did carry the ball. But in attempts, carrying the rock nearly 30 more times than Hurts in that 2020 season. So he carried the rock 2020 over 90 times. He had just about, I believe, just over 4,000 yards. Also led the league in passing yardage, 4,823 yards. His receiving targets now in Cleveland: Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, David Njoku. He's got Chubb in the backfield. PFF dropped their rating of the offensive lines. They had the Eagles first, and then right below the Eagles, they had the Cleveland Browns. So probably one of the best all-around teams that he's played on outside of maybe some of those Clemson teams when he was in Clemson there. So Houston, he was able to put up a high amount of passing yardage, mainly because the teams weren't that great. I'm a little worried in Cleveland that they're in closer games, so they're not going to ask him to do too much with his arm. But the rushing upside is there for Deshaun Watson, and being drafted as the QB10, maybe behind some other guys like Trevor Lawrence. I've seen Aaron Rodgers be picked before him. I've seen Daniel Jones go before him. Daniel Jones does have the rushing upside, but his passing volume isn't at the level of Deshaun Watson. So given a full season, given the production that we've seen out of Deshaun Watson, tied with the receiving weapons that he has there, tied with that Kevin O'Connell scheme that they're going to be running over in Cleveland, QB10, 7th round pick. Are you picking him or passing on him?
I'm picking him there and probably jumping a little bit on that just for the upside. For all the reasons you said, you go back to Houston, not a great team, and maybe they were playing catch up a little bit more. And if DeAndre Hopkins ends up there, hell yeah. That would add to the mix. I'm big on Amari Cooper as well. I thought he was, demonstrated a little quarterback proofness last year. And, I just think we're going to see a better Deshaun Watson or something closer to what we saw in Houston those early years. And you mentioned, it was top 5 pretty much every year he played 16 games or played all the games. Yep. So I'm on board with that. I think Kevin Stefanski will figure out ways to take advantage of that talent because the boss just spent $230 million on that guy and wants his money's worth. So I'm expecting a little bit more. I think there's some upside there this year.
Yeah, and I think as we get closer to August, we get closer to the really heavy draft season, that the rest of the community is going to catch up, and that narrative of, oh, I didn't like what I saw out of that small sample size of games last year is going to kind of fade away once they realize what Deshaun Watson is again. Gator J asks, if D-Hop goes there, how high does Watson move up for you?
Well, I already have him at 9, so I'm not moving him up a hell of a lot. I think he's right about where, but it would make me a little more confident, I think, in where I have him ranked right now. It would be hard for me to move him up a little bit. I think Trevor Lawrence right ahead of him in the usual assortment above that. So I think the rest of those guys are pretty locked in. I think I have Watson. I'm probably ranking him at his ceiling for me right now, but he could, look, he's done it before. Yeah, big passing totals have been fantastic. The question is, are they just going to abandon the rushing attack with Nick Chubb that they have there? No, but I think this could add to it. I just think we're going to see more games with bigger passing numbers and bigger attempt numbers than we've seen in the past, and that's going to open the door. DeAndre Hopkins would add a little icing to the cake. I still think Amari Cooper would be the kind of the alpha, the X, and we'd see Hopkins kind of. I keep envisioning him moving into kind of a Larry Fitzgerald big slot kind of role or he could be really productive, right? I mean, I don't think he's that, that big guy that's going to, get down the field and beat the press coverage and everything every play. But I think he can do well in the slot.
Yeah, I agree. I have trouble envisioning DeAndre Hopkins in a Browns uniform. I still see him in that Honolulu blue as a Detroit line. That's my hope of where he lands. Rhett, Deshaun Watson, before we wrap, pick him or pass it on him?
Pick him. We had talked about this several weeks ago. I'm in on him this year. Like you mentioned, I love the rushing upside. I love the fact that when he was at his best, he was probably the best deep ball thrower in the game. Add a guy like Donovan Peoples-Jones and Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper underneath, David Njoku. A lot of guys who can stretch the field, a lot of guys who can do a lot of good things in that passing game, especially at QB10. What was it you said, 7th round?
Yep.
Easy money. Yeah.
Easy money. Love it. I love it. All right, Bob. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. We appreciate your time. I know time is a special thing, but let the viewers know, let the listeners know where they can find you. Let them know what you got going on inside of fantasy football. Maybe you got a project outside of fantasy football. You mentioned that you like to play music. You got an album coming out or something, but the floor is yours.
I'm relegated to viewing more. I mean, I play at home here, but by the way, everything at Football Die Hard right there. Find everything there. FootballDieHards.com. The radio show is called Football Die Hards. My Twitter handle is @FootballDieHard. So all things Football Die Hard. Go there and check everything out. And if you go to the Football Die Hards website, you'll find our magazines. We're working on those right now. The Pro Forecast, 34th season of continued publication. The digital version of that is available on the website now. And you'll be able to get a 15% discount. Use the promo code DieHards if you get anything. And go to our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button there as well. Do a couple live streams every week. Have a great time. I'll be getting you guys on there. There's no escaping me.
That's great stuff. All right. I just want to thank the viewers for their questions and comments. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. Again, like the stream, subscribe to the channel, rate and review the podcast. That's Rhett Manuel. I'm Chris Battistel. Make sure you tune in next week where we're joined by Howard Bender.
Yeah,
that's Bender. It for us. Toodles.